AWP Voices, your people promise in action.
Hello and welcome to We Are AWP Voices. Today's episode is a special Mental Health Awareness Week episode. One of our guests, Glen, will be talking about his son's journey with depression and anxiety and how, in his memory, Glen, together with the patient and carer experience team, service users and other colleagues, have set up a task and finish group looking at holistic approaches to mental health. Welcome to Anna and Glen.
Thanks.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, so my name is Anastasia Blaize and I'm a patient care experience team manager, and we're a small team of 4. I've been in the role about 3 years now. I also hold some other roles within the trust. I'm a Freedom Speak Up champion, and I chair the Race Equity Network. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Glen Watson. I'm a retired civil servant, and I want to just kind of say a little bit about my experience with mental health, if I may. I didn't really know very much about it, if I'm honest, until about 10 years ago. It was, if I cast my mind back, I grew up in the 1960s and 70s, and people didn't really talk about mental health very much then. You know, I remember there was one lad at my school who turned up one day with bandaged wrists, and a hushed whisper went around the school that he tried to kill himself, and I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't know him very well. Other people didn't know what to say to him or how to approach the subject, and he must have felt terribly isolated. And so I'm delighted that these days at least we're open about it and we talk about it. So I've, my experience with mental health really started 10 years ago. When my youngest son Adam started to struggle, and we'll come into more of this later. It's a terrible thing that people suffer with, and I think there's so much more that could be done to help them, and I guess that's what this podcast is about.
Absolutely. So Glen, could you share a bit about Adam's story?
Yeah, he was always really bright and bubbly and cheerful growing up. He grew up in a loving, tight-knit family, elder brother, just me and his mum, and everybody got along great. He was funny, he was intelligent, he'd constantly pull funny faces and tell jokes and make everybody around him laugh. He was very popular at school. There was a crowd around him, and he wouldn't really have thought that there was a sort of a brewing mental health crisis there at all. He was sporty. I remember once he won a school race, even though halfway through one of his trainers had flown off and he had to stop and he had to go back, put his trainer back on again, but he still charged ahead, caught up with everybody and overtook them and won. So, he was determined as well. He was a lovely lad, absolutely lovely lad. So really sad what happened to him. But I think there were some lessons there, and there were some things that we might hopefully take forward. Adam's first bout of depression started when he went off to university, age 18, and we had a phone call from him towards the end of the first term, his mum and I, late at night, and he was walking along a riverbank, and he was telling us that he just felt so incredibly low. Like nothing in him at all, and he didn't understand it. This had been going on for days. He didn't know what to do about it. I panicked a bit. I thought he was about to throw himself in the river, but we managed to sort of talk him away from the river. We went to fetch him a few days later, possibly the next day, and we brought him home, and he went to his room and pretty much stayed in his room for 3 months. And we might come out for meals and bathroom, obviously, but he just withdrew from the world completely, and it was confusing. I didn't really understand it. I didn't know what to do about it. I had to very rapidly try and teach myself all about mental health problems and how the mind works and the treatments that are available. He came out of that. He left university, landed himself an apprenticeship, did great for maybe 3 months, but then he lost that job. The company was having to make some savings and just got rid of the apprentices and other people that had started recently. So he was out of work. That triggered another episode. He went down and down and down again, back to his bedroom, and wouldn't really come out for another 2 or 3 months. And that cycle then began. So for years, in the end, for years, that cycle continued. Busy, 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 getting to feel overwhelmed. Anxiety creeps in, start overthinking and worrying about everything, and then bam, sink into a deep, dark, depressive episode. And that cycle just continued for 8 years.
But we know Adam tried some alternative methods, such as building a gym in your goat shed. And can you tell us a little bit about these extra methods and how they helped?
After I'd left my civil service job, which I did actually because my wife died of cancer, and I needed to focus on looking after Adam, looking after the family, looking after myself in that traumatic time. I started going to a lot of old school music festivals, and I felt kind of oddly drawn towards people that had had trauma in their lives, and I was keen to understand how they helped themselves. And I learned a little bit about chakra healing and about meditation and about breath work and for relaxation, and spent a lot of time in the healing fields at these old school festivals. Really, really eye-opening actually, and fascinated me how people managed themselves rather than relying on medication, and often choose to live a simpler kind of off-grid lifestyle, more in nature and more time to look after themselves. So I was coming back from these festivals with lots of ideas about how it might help Adam. We tried all sorts. He tried nutritional supplements. He was taking omega-3. He was trying heavy doses of niacin. He was trying aromatherapy, like lavender, for example, for relaxation. He was tried a gong bath once, which he really liked. So a lot of these things were helping him. But what was happening though, I was coming up with these ideas and researching the internet and talking to people, but I'm not qualified and I'm not an expert in this. And it would have been so helpful if the professionals in AWP had been able to advise us and point us towards certain types of treatment, certain types of experience that could have helped. And I think that was what was missing. But coming back to the goat shed, if I may, yeah, crazy night. We just moved house, and the rest of us were busily moving boxes around, moving furniture around, packing, unpacking, and Adam just leaves us all to it, puts his head torch on and goes out to the goat shed and starts banging wood together and getting his power tools out late at night, building this calisthenic gym. And he spent the next few nights doing that while we were all busy moving in. But that was a big help for him. The process of creating, building was helpful. The fact that he'd done it himself, the fact that he was then using it for his workouts was really helpful. And that was one thing that Adam always found helpful, was the outdoors physical work. It's like he and I started a landscaping business together after I'd taken early retirement, and we worked hard on that. We built the business up, and that was fantastic for him. That sort of creating your own job, making your own money, but it got a bit hard and it started to overwhelm him again, and that's when the cycle again happened. He was slipping into anxiety and depression. So yeah, lots of things have helped him over the years, but there wasn't a single thing that solved his problem.
So where did the idea come from to create a holistic approaches mental health group, and what's the project all about?
After Adam's passing, and Glen had been talking to clinicians as part of, it must have been the kind of patient safety kind of investigation process. One of the clinicians phoned me and we had a conversation about, I have this carer, this is what's happened, is there anything that AWP can do, or as a patient care experience team? So I said, yeah. So I phoned you. So I think we were on the phone for a good 45 minutes, just talking through things and talking about, the viability of just setting up a task and finish group. The good thing about co-production is that as staff members, we don't have to have all the answers. We just have to just kind of crack on and roll with it, because I didn't have a vision for the group. I just knew that it would be good to do something, and actually that I had a bit of development in that area myself. So Glen and I spoke, and then I spoke to Maya Batt, who's our EDI lead, because inclusion is a big part of what we do, so that's our main remit, isn't it? Including the voices of patients and carers. And then with another member of staff, Estelle, who's an occupational therapist, who's amazing, we kind of got together with a couple of other service users and talked about what we would like to see happen within AWP. How can we socialise alternative approaches to the medical model of mental health? So what can we do? So we shared our experiences, which included, you know, poetry, painting, walking in nature. I sing in a choir. Lots of different things, as well as Glen's story. Between us, we decided what we would like to see. So apart from speaking in different spaces, we first talked about creating a resource, and those conversations went up and down about what we would do, what that would look like. Then we invited comms in to have a conversation about what they could do about that. And now we have a small resource, which is part of our wellbeing pages, which has been published on the external website and internally, about different alternative kind of organisations or groups that people could actually engage with within each locality. So that's what we really wanted to do, was that we're going to build on it because we've got quite a lot of information, but initially we wanted 4 or 5 different groups or organisations, as well as national ones, within each locality, so that all our service users and carers could find somewhere that they could get to. And along the way we've spoken at, well, the group have. So Glen, along with Nigel and Caroline, have gone around and spoken to different colleagues in the trust. So we spoke to the board in January this year, and attended the medical education webinar, which was really well attended. It was brilliant, actually. Had about 76 people, so that was brilliant. And the trust-wide EDI group as well, which was late last year.
And each time, actually, I've been really struck by the engagement and by the enthusiasm from clinicians and others working in AWP to hear the story, to engage in the discussion. It's particularly with the board, actually. I wasn't quite sure what reception we were going to get, but every single one of them that spoke was supportive. And more than that, they finished with issuing themselves a bit of a challenge, didn't they? To try and find some money this financial year to sort of kickstart some trials, some further work in this area, which I think is really positive. And I think it's I think the time's good, because mental health problems in this country are just going up and up and up and up and up. I used to work in data in my previous civil service career, so I've spent a bit of time fishing around in this, and it's quite shocking when you look at the charts, when you look at the trends. There's been a 4-fold increase in the number of young people seeking mental health support from the professionals in the last 10 years, a 4-fold increase. And across the whole population, we've got adults as well, there's been a 25% increase, but it seems to be a particular problem for young people. I don't know why that is. You could come up with your own theories, plenty of people have done. Some people blame social media, maybe it's pandemic after effects, maybe it's just people aren't living such healthy lifestyles now. Who knows, cost of living crisis, I could go on. But whatever it is, something is contributing to a massive increase in mental health problems. So unless you're going to invest in that, unless you're going to double, triple, quadruple the money that you're spending on mental health, you've got to do something different. And I think the time is right for AWP and others to embrace this more holistic approach. Because what it does is it helps people, it empowers people to manage their own mental health problems. And people that do suffer with depression and anxiety and other forms of mental health often do it in a kind of cyclical nature. For a while they're good, but then they sort of slip down into a depressive episode, but then they climb back out of it, and the cycle continues. And so it's about finding the things, whether it's meditation, whether it's spending time in nature, whether it's improving your diet and eating healthy foods, whatever it is, it's about finding the things that help you manage those troughs and peaks and keep on an even keel throughout. And I think that's the goal here. And I think a lot could be done to help people with that.
Yeah, and I guess what motivates you to want to help?
Well, me personally, I mean, AWP at times during Adam's care were just unbelievable. I mean, he tried to commit suicide twice previously before he was successful. And the AWP crisis team, I just couldn't have asked for better, stronger support. They came to visit him at home every day for weeks and weeks, and they gave us both so much hope. So eternally grateful for that. And I just felt like I wanted to help the organisation that had tried so hard to help us. And I also think genuinely that there's something here that can be done in response really to losing Adam that will be beneficial and positive for lots of other people. And I guess maybe my third reason for wanting to help is that it helps me. Being selfish, you know, this is part of my own healing journey, and you know, losing my youngest son was pretty terrible, pretty traumatic for me, and feeling I'm doing something positive as a result is a great help.
Why do you think this is needed?
Well, I've said that the trends in mental health problems are really concerning. And the resources aren't there to address them and to meet those new demands. So we have to look at doing something different, because otherwise I'm worried that the impact will just be longer waiting times, longer times being assessed and getting back into the system. What happened with my son was that he had intensive care for a while, but then he kind of got better for a while and he stopped seeing the mental health professionals, and then he fell out of the system, and we had to try and get him back into the system, and each time we did that it took a long time. And if we'd have had some support, maybe just through information on the AWP website, if we'd have had some support during those times when we were trying to get him back into the system, it might have helped keep him on an even keel and not slip into another one of his episodes. So I just think that if AWP embrace this and run forward with a lot of the ideas that we've been coming up with, then I think an awful lot of people will be helped.
So in terms of the holistic group, what's that been doing, and what are some of the next steps?
So I suppose within the trust already we have the Bringing Nature into Practice, which is being headed up by medical education, a couple of doctors there, but with some teams and service users. Even things like the staff networks is really good for helping staff maintain their own mental health well-being. So I co-chair the Raise Equity Network. So and there's lots of networks. I think actually just people checking in with each other. So even when we have team checkups in our team, you know, actually all our team like to go for walks. I suppose I don't have a dog, but the rest of the team have dogs, so they're always up and down fields and hills and mountains and things. And also, I suppose because we're a mental health trust, it's about just being unafraid to have those conversations. Having Estelle in our group has been really good, because we know that there's some music therapy, we have art therapy, we have quite a lot of therapeutic interventions that happen. People sometimes have their, their appointments, I suppose the weather in this country isn't always great, but people can go and have their appointments outside, can't they? And walk to parks and do things like that. So I think, and it's more about people feeling free to have those conversations, because a lot of us engage with these alternative approaches, but people don't see them as alternative. But even singing in a choir, that tops up your spirit. Meeting with friends and people you know when you're physically tired, but you meet up with your bestie and your spirit and the essence of your being just feels topped up. Things like that for me, people kind of top me up. So lots of people get peopled out, but so it's just about making it business as usual, but actually asking people what would be helpful for you, what would you find helpful, and helping them to be intentional about that. So helping them to think through those things, because people don't realise that all these different things, even social interaction, is an intervention, not an intervention, but it's something that can help you. And intentionally looking for bits of joy. That's what I always think. You know, what small thing can I think of today that will make me feel a little bit better? Just things like that, isn't it? You just have to, and the words that we speak into our own lives. I think I collect affirmations, and there's loads all over social media, but we always talk about words, but sometimes being intentional about looking at yourself in the mirror and say, "You got it, girl," or whatever it is, just something that will actually set you off feeling positive about yourself.
Something positive in yourself. Something positive.
And it can be small. It doesn't have to be massive. Yeah.
For me, it's about it's partly about trying to think and understand a little bit more about how our brain works and the role that the brain's mood chemicals play. So I'm talking about dopamine and serotonin and oxytocins and endorphins, and each one of those has a different role in regulating our mood and making us feel better. So, you know, dopamine is like the reward chemical. It's set yourself goals, complete tasks, however small they are. Oxytocin, it's sometimes called the hug drug. Meeting with your friends, as you're saying, Anna, giving people a good long hug, holding it for a good few seconds, just makes you feel better. It releases things in your brain that help you. Endorphins, it's, you know, go for a strenuous walk, do some physical exercise, you'll feel better for it. Endorphins will be released in your mind. But often it doesn't require anything any more complicated than that so often, but it's about understanding that. I suppose you could say that our brains have evolved over the millennia to work in a certain way, and we're kind of interfering with that now, because we're sitting indoors, we're sitting down, we're spending all our time looking at our phones, and we need to kind of reconnect with the way our minds work and the way these mood chemicals, the role they play in our lives. Really encourage anybody to just read into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess we may already have covered this, Anna, but could you tell us a little bit more about the holistic approaches we have here for mental health that we have here at AWP?
Yeah, so that was, you know, things like the staff networks. I think they're an important part of actually fostering a sense of belonging for staff and looking after their own mental well-being, which actually does then impact on the service users and carers that they interact with. And one thing that we're doing with our involvees, our patients and carer involvees at the moment, is we've set up a reflective space for them, just for them, no staff. And we had our first one on Monday this week, and it went really, really well. Facilitated by a service user, and we had a little debrief session afterwards. And even something like that, which hasn't actually been done in the trust before, but even something like that really topped them up, and they were just brimming with enthusiasm about having their own space, just about working within mental health, their experience of working in partnership with AWP, and their theme for that day was actually belonging, and they discussed what belonging actually meant to them. So belonging meant that not feeling different, belonging meant feeling included, actually working in partnership and not there being a power imbalance, actually having their own space, because we have our own space as staff. They work with us in partnership, actually they had their own space. So yeah, even, you know, from their point of view, and many of them are still receiving care from AWP, but this is all part of their recovery journey, but also a part of our journey with them as staff in AWP. So there's loads of things that teams are doing across the organisation that are working well. So Caroline, who's in our group, she has said that, you know, even being part of the group has helped her to advocate for herself with her care team. And so she's been able to ask exactly, this is what I want to do and this is what will help me. And there was no barrier. They said, yeah, all right, let's just do this thing. So, and that was amazing. I got a bit emotional when she said that, because if this group can help somebody, empower somebody, help them to find their voice and help them to advocate for themselves in order to say to the care team, this is what will be helpful for me. And they say, okay, let's do that. That's, you know, that's a big tick. So if it can happen for one, it can happen for many. So yeah, we just want to encourage people to be free to talk about it. And you don't have to spend money in order to do these things. I think sometimes finance can be a massive barrier. And we've got we've got a lot of poverty, haven't we? Even digital poverty. But actually the sky is there, the sun is there now. People can hopefully leave their homes if they're able to do that. And even if you have to walk with purpose and you take the long way round to Sainsbury's just to pick up your shopping and the long way back, you know, even I do that sometimes. I don't want to go for a walk, but we need bread and milk. But, you know, even those things, just having that intention and sorting out your mind as you do that can be really, really helpful. Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the benefits of these alternative methods?
I think there's a difference between joy, happiness and contentment. But I think like joy is like an inner peace, isn't it? It's not the kind of skipping around, but just thinking I'm doing this for me and this is helping me feel better. And then there's some joy that you can, I mean, that might feel different for different people. I think that's a benefit. I think being able to interact with people on a slightly deeper level because you've looked after yourself enables you to do that, because then you're more willing to engage on a deeper level. I think just thinking better about yourself. I think it's really easy to be negative, isn't it? We can be quite a negative, apologetic British culture. We're always apologising for things, always sorry for something or afraid of something in our speech. And I wonder if sometimes words like that, as opposed to somebody giving you a compliment, say, that's a nice white shirt, and you say, thanks very much, as opposed to girls go, oh yeah, it only cost me £5, and like, nobody cares about that. They actually say you look good in a shirt. You know, and because you kind of minimise what somebody said, you've kind of brought the conversation down. I think sometimes we have to be intentional about, not fake positivity, but just accepting who we are and what people say. So, yeah.
And for you, Glen, do you think holistic approaches should be used more commonly in mental health treatments?
I do. And I think, I mean, they are, as Anna's been saying, I think there's quite a lot of that going on already. It varies depending on which part of the country you're in. And there's quite a lot of charities getting behind this as well. I mean, I've been looking at the Mind website and the Rethink Mental Illness and the Mental Health Foundation, and all of them are really saying some quite positive things about the benefits of a holistic approach to mental health. And I think the charitable sector might be a few steps ahead of the NHS in some ways. So it feels to me like there's a bit of a new movement starting. That it's not started by me. You know, I've learned about this quite recently, and I'm sort of tapping into it and trying to encourage it. But I think it's there. There is some real benefits, as you've been saying as well for yourself. Though, you know, I found myself learning a bit more about meditation, about chakra healing, whatever. It's made me think a lot more about how I am and how I interact with the world. It's made me a bit more compassionate and empathic towards people that are struggling and people that have sort of had some kind of trauma that they're trying to get over. I think it makes us better people, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Anna?
No, not really. I think all these things, I always think that kindness is an underrated character trait. And actually when people are kind to themselves, they're kind to others, aren't they? So healed people heal others, don't they? So I think there's something to be said about all of this is you being kind to yourself. And therefore as you move through the world, you will kind of take that with you and attract that to you, won't you? So I think it just makes me smile thinking about all the ways that, you know, people can do good for themselves, which are quite simple. It's just reframing your mind and reframing how you think about these things. And I've learned loads being in the group, and reframing just really simple things and making them a bit more profound for myself. So yeah, I'm very thankful to have met Glen and worked in the group. We haven't finished yet, but we will be a task and finish group that will finish, but hopefully we'll finish having kind of socialised the holistic approaches, but actually having more resource for people to tap into. And that's the end goal, because that means that conversations and it will inform people's practice as well as we move along.
Before we close, Glen, is there anything else you'd like to add today?
Just that point about the task and finish, really, because I'm quite ambitious, and I'd like to see AWP and other health trusts around the country do a lot more in this space. And because this is fundamentally about culture change, that takes time and effort, and is a thing that goes on for years developing. This isn't something that we'll finish next month and then we won't think about it anymore. So if we want clinicians, and if we want frontline mental health staff to be having conversations with patients and their carers about holistic approaches, and to be encouraging certain activities and people trying certain things and tapping into different opportunities, if we want all that to happen, there's a lot that has to happen first. There needs to be this period of talking about it, starting the conversation, sharing the message, but then there fundamentally needs to be people designing training courses, people putting on seminars, people developing websites, people developing social media apps, etc., sort of pointing people to the different opportunities. It'd be nice to see some kind of internal staff survey, just testing out what people know about this and what people's experiences have been. And really, really importantly, we need some more research into what works well. There is some pretty strong evidence around that certain things like meditation, spending time out in nature, physical exercise, some strong evidence that really works for people. There are published scientific papers, and there's a growing body of evidence that some of the stuff that's a little bit less mainstream, if you like, using nutritional supplements, or I've mentioned chakra healing, or various other things. There's some growing body of evidence that works as well, but there hasn't been enough research, and I would like to see the research program within AWP and elsewhere targeted a little bit more on this.
Anna?
In terms of apps, not that that's something that AWP can do, but sometimes when I see things, if we've had a few apps that we've sent out to carers about their well-being as carers as well, that have been on our list. So there is quite a lot. So it's about us, not necessarily, we might not be able to create things, but when we find things, we actually share that and point people in those directions, because it's about sharing that knowledge. And so people will find something that they can use. Not everybody can use an app, but they might be able to walk to a group. So say in Bristol, there's a Stepping Sisters walking group purely for women of colour. So that's brilliant. So that means that you're with people who look like you, who understand your experience, but then you can go and they go all over the country and walk. So things like that are out there, and that's one of the groups we've put on the website as well. But lots of people wouldn't necessarily know about that. So, and then there's a wellbeing app that we shared with some of our carers on our list about how do you look after yourself as a carer. And so you kind of go in the app and you put in lots of different things. So yeah, I think there are things out there. We just have to be really intentional about finding it and getting it out on our social media as well. I think that's important. Yeah.
Well, all that remains just for me to say a big thank you today to you both for joining us. A massive thank you to Glen for sharing Adam's story. Yeah. Now, if any of these topics have resonated with you or one of your colleagues, please do get in touch with us and we'll do our best to support you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.